What's down, people, and welcome back to another episode of Ghetto Gospel. So where we left off at. Last week, week before last, we talked about Abraham kicking his baby mama and his son out the family. We also talked about how his son probably ended up better for it. Last thing we talked about was how King Bema made a deal with Abraham that they was gonna treat each other right because he could see Abraham was getting richer and more powerful because God was with him and King Bema ain't really want that smoke. And now we caught up. So before we jump into chapter 22, something that's important to recognize is that the chapters and the verses in the Bible ain't coming till way after they wrote it. Now because God is in control, I'm pretty sure that the chapters and the verses is where they are because he want them to be there, but also you kind of got to look at it like this chapter bumped right up against the last chapter. And that's exactly what it say at the beginning of the chapter. So the first thing it say at the beginning of chapter 22 is that after all of that stuff happened, God tested Abraham. And I'm gonna tell you right now, remember that episode about entendres? What we about to talk about is one of the most important ones in here. It wouldn't be a stretch to say that if this chapter wasn't in here, the rest of the book wouldn't really make sense. Y'all ain't gonna see that until way later, but trust me, it's super important. So God hit up Abraham like,
"Yo, hey."
And Abraham was like, "Here I am." And God was like,
"Take your son, your only son, who you love, go to the mountains out there in the east and sacrifice that boy for a burnt offering on the specific mountain I'm gonna tell you about."
That's a lot happening in that verse right there. So first things first, God called Isaac Abraham's only son. Like Ishmael ain't even exist. That's cold-blooded. I mean, technically, God never told Abraham to go lay up with that woman and have Ishmael. But at the same time, that boy never asked to be born. Now he's just out here with no father, right? Well, yes and no. God told Abraham not to worry about Ishmael because he was gonna take care of him. God took the son that Abraham wasn't never supposed to have, essentially the unplanned child, and took the responsibility on himself to take care of him. The last chapter literally say that God was with Ishmael. I don't think it's much more took care of that you could get than for God to be with you. The next thing is, God made sure to say, "Your son who you love." And it's the first time in the Bible where you see the word love. And it's just my opinion, but that make me think that if you a father and your son don't feel love coming from you, you probably doing it wrong. So after a night where I imagine Abraham ain't get too much sleep, it say he got up early in the morning, put his stuff on his donkey, and took 2 of his young men plus Isaac with him. When it say his young men, you kind of got to think about it like it's young dudes who work for him, but they kind of like his adopted sons, but they also might have been like a couple of shooters on his team that he took with him just in case. You know that OG in the hood that's got a gang of dudes who arrive for him? Yeah, it was kind of like that. So then it say he split some logs for the offering, which I ain't gonna lie, is pretty impressive for a dude over 100. Then headed out to where God told him to go. So 3 days after he started walking, it say he looked up and saw the spot where they was gonna sacrifice. And Abraham told his little homie, "Y'all chill out right here with the donkeys. Me and my boy gonna go over there and worship. We'll be right back." Now, a lot of times when folks think about this story, they think about it like Isaac a toddler. But let's keep it a buck. That don't really make no sense. So it say in verse 6 that Abraham gave the wood to Isaac and he carried the knife in the fire. Don't let Captain America fool you. Wood ain't light. The fact that he gave Isaac the wood to carry up the mountain mean that Isaac was strong enough to carry the wood up the mountain. The way I figure it, that make him at least as strong as an average soldier. So the 2 of them went up the mountain and Isaac was looking around like, "Yo, Pops." And Abraham was like, "What's up, son?" And Isaac was like, "We got fire. Yep. We got wood. Where the lamb at?" And Abraham was like, "God gonna provide the lamb for himself." And the 2 of them kept walking up the mountain. Now, it's a couple of things to notice here. Isaac knew something was missing, which tell me he wasn't new to this. Abraham had been teaching that boy how to sacrifice to the Lord. And the other thing is this. You think Abraham was just making stuff up or in denial when he said that God was gonna provide the lamb himself? I don't think so. That man had been walking with the Lord for a long time at this point. He saw how God kept his promise by giving him a son.
He's beginning to believe.
Ain't no way God could turn Isaac into a great nation if he let him get sacrificed. The last thing is this. I was wondering why it kept saying the 2 of them walked together. It said that in verse 6 and in verse 8. When I looked up what the words meant, it ain't just mean they walked together. It meant they walked in agreement. This might be a stretch, but it seemed like at least on some level, they was on the same page about what was about to happen. So then it say they got to the spot that God told Abraham about. He built the altar, arranged the wood, bound up Isaac, and put him on top of the wood. And let's just be clear about it. I imagine that if Isaac, who was strong enough to carry this wood up the mountain, didn't trust or wanted to fight off his 100-plus-year-old pops, he absolutely could. Then it say Abraham reached out and took the knife to slaughter his son. Most of the time, when folks think about this scene, they imagine something like this, or this, or this. But nothing in here say he raised up the knife, just that he grabbed it. I mean, I guess God knew he was gonna sacrifice Isaac, but as far as I could tell, there wasn't no big dramatic moment where he had the knife raised up, traumatizing his son. It's a small thing to clarify, but I think it make a difference. So when Abraham grabbed the knife, the angel of the Lord called out to him like, "Yo, hey!" And Abraham was like, "Here I am." Then the angel of the Lord was like, "Don't touch that boy. Don't do nothing to him. Now I know that you fear God, since you ain't keep your only son from me." And when Abraham looked up, he saw a ram caught in the bushes by his horns. So Abe went, grabbed the ram, and sacrificed it in the place of his son. Then he named that spot, "The Lord Will Provide." And that started a saying where folks would be like, "It'll be provided on the Lord's mountain." And I'm gonna tell y'all this absolutely ain't the last time we gonna hear about this mountain. And believe it or not, this ain't the most important thing to happen on it either. So then the angel of the Lord called out to Abraham again like, "I swear on myself." And then it's a little insert telling you he making this statement from God. "Because you did this and you ain't keep your son from me, I'ma bless you and give you buku offspring and all the promises he already made to him." But he also added this piece: "And all the nations on the earth gonna be blessed by your offspring because you obeyed my command." And after that, it say that Abraham went back to his little homies and they got up and went back to the spot where him and King Bema made their little treaty last chapter. And they posted up there. That's a lot, right? And when you read it, it's not telling you a whole lot about how Isaac and Abraham or anybody else feel about the whole thing. You know it's gotta be all kind of emotions happening, but for some reason all that stuff get left out. A lot of preachers and teachers try to fill in them gaps with their opinions and how they figure things must have been, but we try hard not to do that here. I'ma do my best to tell y'all what it say. No more, no less. I don't always get it right, but that's the goal. So the last thing in the chapter is talking about what happened with Abraham's brother that we last heard about back in chapter 11. And it say that he done had 8 sons, a grandson, and a granddaughter by his wife, and 4 sons by his concubine, aka legal side chick. And it seemed like this ain't got nothing to do with the rest of the story, but we gonna talk more about them folks in a couple of chapters. So that's it for this week. If you don't know Jesus, but you trying to get to know him, check out the first link in the description down there. I'll see y'all next week, and as always, peace, and I hope y'all people straight.